Your secret grew heavier with each passing day, pressing against your ribs like a stone that refused to move, suffocating you in silence. You had never told Jungkook about the pregnancy, not because you were uncertain of his reaction, but because you already knew the outcome. It would only tighten the chains he had wrapped around you, would only deepen the cage he had built and reinforced with his obsession. The truth was, you didn't even know how many weeks it had been. Time slipping away in blurred days and endless nights inside those suffocating walls of his mansion. The thought of seeking help, of visiting a hospital, or even talking to someone about it remained nothing more than a dream. He never allowed you outside, not even for the smallest errands, and after your failed attempt to escape once, the world beyond those gates had turned into a forbidden territory you couldn't reach. He doubled your security, watching you with eyes even when his body wasn't there, trapping you inside like a possession he would rather see broken than free. Every morning you woke, the weight of not knowing grew stronger than unanswered questions eating at your sanity. How far along you were, what was happening inside you, what kind of life was being forced into existing against your will. It was a cruel cycle, a torment that deepened your hatred for him with every breath you took. You clutched your stomach, sometimes not in affection but in fear, wondering how long you could keep the secret from him before your body betrayed you, before the evidence of his control began to show in ways you could no longer hide. He had ruined you once by stealing your freedom, your youth, and your innocence, and now he was ruining you again by binding you to a future you never wanted, a future that felt more like a sentence than a gift. The walls of his mansion bore witness to your suffering, but they would never speak, and so you endured in silence, trapped between your hatred for him and your fear of what would happen if he ever discovered the truth. The soft sunlight sneaked through the half open curtains, brushing across your face and pulling you out of the shallow sleep that had become your daily routine. You opened your eyes slowly, your lashes heavy, your body still tired, though you had rested all night. The first thing you saw was not the ceiling, not the curtains, not the walls you had memorized for months, but Jungkook. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, his dark hair messy yet perfectly framing his handsome face, and his eyes locked on you with an intensity that made your stomach twist. He was smiling, not his usual charming smile that you once loved, but a soft and tender one that carried an unsettling contradiction. You blinked, staring back at him blankly, your face void of any expression. For you, it had become second nature to hide everything, your fear, your grief, your anger, even the flicker of sorrow that wanted to show through. He leaned closer, his breath warm against your lips, and whispered almost cheerfully, "Good morning, darling." Before you could react, his lips brushed against yours gently, as if this was just another day, as if he had never caged you in this mansion, as if the world was normal and nothing was broken between you two. You didn't respond, didn't push him away, didn't close your eyes, you simply lay still like a doll, silent as always, and he pulled back with a look that was too controlled to be real. Deep inside, he was desperate. Desperate for your voice, desperate for a single word, a sound, anything. But you never gave it. You never allowed yourself to give him that satisfaction. He chuckled softly, though it felt forced, and tapped your cheek with his finger, pretending your silence didn't weigh on him like chains. "You are really lazy in the morning, huh? I thought by now you would at least get used to me watching you sleep." He waited, paused, searching your eyes for any reaction, but you just blinked slowly, your lips pressed in a thin line. His smile flattered for a second, but he quickly replaced it, masking the storm that always brewed inside him. Anyway, I'm making breakfast today. I know, I know. Don't look so surprised. He continued, even though you weren't looking at him at all. He was talking to fill the suffocating silence you carried like a weapon. I used to make the best pancakes back in the days. Let me make you your favorite pancakes, okay? He laughed lightly, almost nervously, then leaned in closer again, brushing his lips against your temple. You didn't flinch, didn't move, just sat up slowly, your eyes fixed somewhere beyond him as if he didn't exist. The air between you was heavy with everything unsaid, your restraint, his obsession, your unspoken questions, and his unsending desire. He sighed quietly, hiding it under another smile, and murmured, "Freshen up, baby. I'll be downstairs. Don't keep me waiting too long, alright?" Standing up, he adjusted his shirt, glancing at you one last time with a softness that would have broken your heart once, but now only made your chest feel hollow. He leaned over again, pressing a lingering kiss against your forehead, then one on each cheek as though he was blessing you with his affection before leaving. You still didn't move, your eyes empty, your lips sealed shut. Jungkook straightened, pausing in the doorway. For a brief second, his mask slipped, his smile trembled, his jaw clenched, and his gaze darkened, as if your silence was slicing him up open from the inside. But then, just as quickly, he fixed his expression and said in a lighter tone, "Don't take too long. You don't want the pancakes to get cold. Trust me." And with that, he walked out, his footsteps fading down the hall. The silence returned heavier than before, wrapping around you like chains, while somewhere in the kitchen Jungkook pretended he wasn't breaking inside from the one thing he couldn't have, your voice. Your chest rose and fell slowly as the sound of the door shutting behind him echoed faintly in the silence of the room. For a long moment you just sat there, still frozen in the exact spot he had left you, lips tingling faintly from his kiss and mind spiraling with emotions you couldn't afford to voice. Then, almost without realizing, your hand slipped down to your stomach, pressing lightly against the small curve that was beginning to show. It wasn't very noticeable yet, but you could feel it. Feel the difference, feel the life quietly blooming inside of you, even if you were too uncertain to know how far along you were. A sharp ache coiled in your chest as you clutched the swell protectively, your breath shaking as you exhaled. Jungkook didn't know. He couldn't know. You hadn't even admitted it to yourself properly. You weren't even given the chance to confirm it in a hospital because he never let you outside. His control over your world was absolute, and so even this monumental, terrifying, fragile secret was yours alone to carry. You pressed your forehead to your knees for a brief moment, whispering inside your heart for strength, for clarity, for anything that might keep you from breaking apart. Closing your eyes, you tried to calm the storm of emotions that threatened to drown you. His smile from earlier still lingered in your vision, a smile that looked so warm, so tender, as if he hadn't stolen your freedom, as if he hadn't caged you behind walls and locked doors. He behaved as though this life was normal, as if you were simply a couple sharing mornings, as though you weren't suffocating under the weight of silence you had wrapped yourself in. Each time he spoke to you, each time he acted like everything was ordinary, you wanted to scream to shatter his illusion, but your voice had been buried so deep that you could no longer find it. You lived in silence not because you wanted to, but because it was the only weapon left to you. Still, that silence didn't stop him from being desperate. Desperate to hear your voice, desperate enough to shower you with morning kisses and words he thought might one day melt you again. But you weren't the same. You couldn't be. And now, with the fragile life hidden inside of you, you had even You had even more reason to guard yourself, to think twice before every step, every glance. You leaned back against the headboard with a shuddering breath, trying to push away the suffocating panic and replace it with calm, even if only for a minute. Finally, you pushed yourself up from the bed, forcing your trembling legs to move. The room felt too heavy and too oppressive, as though the walls themselves were watching you, judging you for the secret you carried. Your hand stayed protectively pressed against your belly as you walked slowly towards the bathroom, as though you could shield the unborn child from the weight of Jungkook's shadow. You paused by the mirror for a moment, catching your own reflection, the dullness in your eyes, the faint puffiness from nights spent silently crying into the pillow, the pale shade of your lips. You barely recognized yourself. The girl who once had laughter in her eyes had been replaced by someone who only survived day by day quietly. Day by day, quietly enduring. With a quiet exhale, you turned away from the reflection and stepped into the bathroom, needing to wash away the heaviness of the morning, needing the cool water to ground you, to remind you that for a few minutes this space was yours and only yours. You shut the door softly, leaned against it for a beat, and closed your eyes once more, whispering silently to yourself, "Hold on a little longer, just hold on."